I'm Microsoft teaming with Microsoft Teams. I'm learning and dreaming with Microsoft Teams. The hub and the teamwork of Microsoft 365 in these quarantine times. I'm Microsoft teaming with Microsoft Teams. Yeah, with Microsoft Teams.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our first show of Season 3. I'm Stephen Rose. Welcome. For those of you who joined us last season, we got some great feedback from you on the shows that we did, our interviews with Jeff Teeper and Ignite. But the one thing that we kept hearing is we'd love to hear from more customers and how they adopted and rolled out and secured teams. We'd love to hear how they did it. So we're going to be focusing on that this season. And I think there's no better person for us to kick that off with than Todd Knapp, who is the CEO of Envision. Todd, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Awesome. Now, you guys have been around for a while, like 20, 22 odd years. Take a moment and talk about yourself and Envision. Then I want to talk about this program that you developed. And then we have a new segment with our producer, Meg, who's going to jump in and ask us some questions. But let's start with yourself.
Sure. So Envision Technology Advisors, like you said, we are a 22-year-old IT consulting company. We are based in Rhode Island, but we service customers all over the United States. And we have built the practice around Microsoft. We are a Microsoft Gold partner. And really what we specialize in is figuring out how to use all these great technologies to build human-centric solutions, things that make people's lives better, things that make the world around us better. And really, there's no better platform to work with than the Microsoft platform for that. So we were incredibly excited when we were approached for the project we're going to discuss today.
Now, you guys do a lot of work with non-for-profits, and I know that last summer, Skills for Rhode Island's Future, which is a non-for-profit organization, came to you and said, hey, we did this great internship last year, but we don't think we can do it in a time of COVID. And you and your team stepped up. And the short version is you were not only able to do this, but to host it for 500 high school juniors and seniors, really blow some numbers out of the water. It was absolutely amazing. So I'm excited to jump in. But before we start getting into all the cool details, I want to introduce our new producer, Meg. Meg, how are you?
Perfect. So fun facts of Todd and Steven. So it's going to be a pretty quick round. Brace yourself. I know this is a little bit nervous, but we want to get to know you both.
Lightning round. Here we go.
Perfect. First question for you both. What was your first job you ever wanted as a little kid?
Todd, go ahead.
Okay, so this actually came up over Christmas time. It was a conversation at my family's. We did a tele-Christmas this year. Apparently, the first job I ever wanted was to work on a garbage truck. I was apparently a small kid. One drove by. There was a guy hanging off the back of it, and apparently I thought that was the coolest looking thing in the world. I wish a motorcycle had driven by, and I thought, look at the freedom. But no, apparently, garbage truck guy.
Yeah. Okay. I was born in Canada. I was raised in Montreal. And for some reason, when my grandmother would take me to the bank, and I think this might be why they always gave out lollipops when she would go in. So I wanted to be a royal banker. That was what I wanted to be at age 3 or 4. So
how'd that work out for you, by the way?
Yeah, I thank God it did not. So it's all good. All right. Meg.
What was your favorite class in high school?
That one's easy for me. 7th grade physical sciences. I absolutely love science. I love STEM. And so I loved that class. But my teacher, Mr. Navarrete, really took an interest in me. And so in subsequent years, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, he let me come back and teach the class from time to time with him. And so I think some of the early experience I got working with other people and building community and thinking about human-centric things really was instilled in me in all places in a physical science class in the 7th grade.
That's cool. In 8th grade, I had a poetry class that really turned my head around. I was not a big fan of poetry, and we had a teacher who read some like Bukowski and way out stuff. And it really got me thinking, wow, and also read lyrics from guys like Lou Reed and things like that, and understanding that music and poetry and all this could come together with my love of music. It was very eye-opening. All right, Meg.
Did he rap for you? Did he do like the trope?
This was long before rap. This would have been the 80s, so rap had not quite happened yet. But hey, he turned me on to Lou Reed, so I give him credit for that, which is pretty cool.
Perfect segue into this question. What was your first concert you went to?
Mine was Kiss on the Kiss Alive tour, on the Rock and Roll Over. So that was pretty amazing. My second concert, Al Jarreau and Spyro Gyra Weather Report. So talk about two opposite ends of the spectrum, but I got to see Kiss and just blew my mind as a young 12-year-old, 12-year-old boy. Todd?
Yeah, I had nothing nearly that cool. So we went to a lot of concerts when I was a kid because my mom worked for an arts council. But the first one I ever went to, just me, Crash Test Dummies.
Nice.
That was the thing.
And we've come full circle with Canadian bands. So there you go. I talked about Canada, their Canadian band. We came all the way around. Awesome. Well, the complete opposite of One Hit Wonder is this project that you did. You like that segue? How that worked?
I do. That was really crafty. I like it.
I appreciate that. So, Todd, I think right now it'd be great for us to take a moment and take a look at this video that really kind of talks about the program. So let's check that out.
From July to August 2020, Skills for Rhode Island's Future ran one of, if not the largest, paid internship programs in Rhode Island's history. The Empower Interns COVID-19 Innovation Challenge, presented by Skills for Rhode Island's Future. The fact that this program ran during COVID-19, a time when many other programs were being forced to cancel, makes this achievement even more notable. The program featured nearly 500 students from across Rhode Island. The students were broken down into 20 corporations, and each corporation was paired with a corporate sponsor who presented them with a real business challenge that they were facing due to COVID-19. The teams of interns worked across 6 weeks to come up with innovative solutions to these challenges, eventually presenting those solutions to a panel of judges in mid-August. Envision Technology Advisors were proud to be a part of this historic initiative. Envision helped Skills for Rhode Island's Future conceive, architect, and deploy a complete virtual economy powered by the Microsoft 365 platform in just 4 weeks' time. Our technology experts also played a role in coaching interns and helping to iterate the technology as new needs arose. Join us over the coming weeks as we tell this story through short videos, articles, and even live discussions with key members of this initiative. We'll look at how this groundbreaking program was conceived and built, how the interns embraced the technology to communicate and collaborate in powerful ways, and how this entire deployment serves as a model for what the future of work should look like.
So in 2019, you had 95 interns in a program, and walk me through this. They come to you and say, we want to do this. You have 4.5 weeks, and you turn this thing around and get 500 people into a 7-week program. So how the heck did you do this?
Well, so I'd love to take credit for the 500 students, but I have to say the folks over at Skills for Rhode Island saw the vision immediately and latched right onto it. They had already planned on scaling the program because it was wildly successful the year prior. And the thing that I always forget to say to people is that, yes, it was 500 students, but the goal was to give them a real world internship experience. So to do that, we paired them up with about 120 mentors and coaches from the corporate community. So we had at any given moment, 600 to 650 folks that were needing to be able to collaborate and work together. They came to us, they said, listen, we had this program lined up. We're not sure if it's going to work in a world where everybody is at home. And, these kids were supposed to be in the field in these companies that they were interning for. And they said, is there a way to do this online? And it all began with one very fateful conversation where we got a couple of folks from Envision and the senior executive team from Skills for Rhode Island together, and we brainstormed and we talked about what might be possible. And coming out of that was this idea that we could create an entire business ecosystem exclusively online. And we talked about using Microsoft Teams to create what ultimately became called Skills Village. And in the village, we had corporate headquarters for each team. We had the post office where they could submit their assignments. We had the convention center where we held our meetings. And we really did try to rebuild the same places that we would be in Rhode Island if the internship were actually happening in the real world.
So there's a lot of tools out there that you could have used.
Oh, yeah.
Why Teams? Why was Teams the right one? Why wasn't it Zoom or Slack or any one of, Google Hangouts or any one of these? What was it about Teams that really said, hey, this is going to be the platform that we really want to use, or is going to allow us to do the types of stuff that we want to allow students to do?
So a couple of things. Number one, we had those other tools at our disposal. There was no reason we had to use Teams. We could have done this on any number of platforms, but we would not have had the experience that we ended up with. We wanted the kids to have the closest experience to being physically in these companies that they could have. We wanted them to experience what it was like to try and build a company and work with other executives and craft a team and create connection. And so we needed things like automation and things like, forms and analytics and all these different pieces and parts. It wasn't just about meeting in video. It wasn't just about chatting. It was about file collaboration and 100 other things. And frankly, from an ecosystem point of view, yeah, I could try and assemble, 60 other products and get them all to talk to each other, but it isn't going to happen in 4.5 weeks.
No.
And it certainly would not be as seamless as the ecosystem that Microsoft's already built. So why reinvent the wheel?
So how do you ensure that everybody has a good experience? Because you've got people across a variety of devices, Mac and PC and Android and Windows. How did you ensure that, you were able to make sure that people could access this and do it the way that they envisioned? Because we'll talk in a little bit, kids that age or teens that age are very smart and start to think about new ways to use stuff. So how do you start by going, this needs to be a good experience and this is how we ensure that?
Yeah, well, one of the first things was acknowledging up front that we were not going to be able to impose a device or a specific use case on this population. These kids were clearly going to do whatever they were in the mood to do with, in terms of accessing this environment. And frankly, that was fine because the Teams ecosystem is built for that anyway. Yeah. It's designed, it leans into the idea that, Stephen, you might be wildly more efficient on a tablet than I am. And, maybe there's reasons why I need a different kind of device.
My 16-year-old daughter can do more on her cell phone than I can do on my laptop while walking and chatting with someone else at the same time. So I absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I'll tell you, key to the whole experience thing is accessibility. Yeah. We with 500 students around Rhode Island, they were not all native English speakers. We had people with visual impairments and hearing impairments. We needed an ecosystem that would support screen readers, one that would allow us to do potentially on-the-fly live translation into multiple languages. We needed the ability to create forms and content that could be viewed in your native language. And that's all already in the platform. It just has to be enabled and configured. But in addition to that, we had other families sending students who maybe didn't have devices to begin with or didn't have internet. So we did, in fact, provision well north of 150, I believe, devices to put out on loan to students that needed to join. We worked with cell providers to get hotspots that we could distribute and worked with them to get the bandwidth restrictions for rate limiting lifted so that these kids would be able to participate smoothly. In the end, the access side of it ended up being almost the easiest thing. The kids showed us other challenges down the road.
Oh, yeah. And we'll talk about those in a minute. Now, you want to talk about success. This was a 7-week program, and I have some stats here. You had 231,000 chat messages, over 10,000 posts, 68,000 replies, 182 active channels, almost 7,000 meetings, 4,000 one-on-one calls, and 3 million minutes of video time. That's insane for something along those lines. Wow. And I think you told me you did have a few folks using Zoom, but the numbers were so small that it was that everybody gravitated toward Teams, that they got it and they were able to figure it out really quickly.
Yeah, actually, out of all those big stats you just said, the total number of Zoom meetings, I think, was 43. Out of the whole program.
Wow.
But, the catch is that some of those 43 meetings were because we had a guest speaker that needed to interact with everybody, and their company only uses Zoom, and there were the financial services firm, it's locked down. We had to use their platform.
Right.
And so that also then meant, okay, how do we take the content that's being created in non-Microsoft ecosystems and integrate it into Skills Village. And that was where the Convention Center came in handy. The team that we called Convention Center, we created a library that was driven by Microsoft Stream, built a channel in Stream, and then deployed recordings into that, and then published them out through the Convention Center so that kids could go back and view them again.
Now, you also used form and flow approvals and Power Platform. So let's talk a little bit about that and some of the things that worked with.
So this is a great example of a place where we walked in, we thought we had it on lock, and discovered that, boy, did we not. And rapid iteration became the name of the game. So, you know, when you're talking about 500 students, who, by the way, it's a paid internship, you know, so there is over $1 million of salary being paid out to the teams that we put into the groups. Well, you know, we thought, yeah, a few of them are going to need to, you know, have a day off or something, or maybe they'll have a doctor's appointment, you know, but how many could, it's 7 weeks. How many could really need to do
And
that?
it's COVID going on at the same time. Yeah.
Right. How much of this could really be happening? Well, let me tell you, we put up the form for absentee requests, and we built a lightweight automation around it for an approval automation that did a couple of basic things. And within, I don't know, 2 hours, I think we had over 100 submissions of that form. And all of a sudden it was like, oh man, now there's also multiple submissions happening. We suddenly needed to be able to analyze, you know, how many times is an individual student asking to be out, what percentage of their time is going to be out of the office. We realized that, geez, the executive teams of the student corporations need to know what's approved and what's not. We had HR people that were assigned in each student corporation. They needed the opportunity to have input. So we very quickly ended up with multi-tier approvals, Power BI dashboards to analyze performance. We ended up with multilingual forms in order to support the non-native English speakers. It turned into something that we thought was like, oh, this would be a cakewalk. No. Very, very complicated, and it happened really fast.
That's awesome. I want to talk about what happens when you give teens a platform and cool things like HoloLens and Tinkercad and how they just take off with it. So Absolutely. We'll come back in a minute. We'll finish our conversation with Todd. So every week I get a lot of questions on Twitter. You're always welcome to send me one at Stephen L. Rose, and we'll try to answer it on air. My favorite question from this week: how do I know when a feature is GA, and how do I know when I'm going to be getting it? Well, you can check out our public roadmap. We'll put that address up on the screen for you, and that tells you when features have gone GA. Now, if you're an insider, or if you're part of our first release, you put your tenant into our first release mode, you're going to see those features earlier than the date that is promised there. Now, be aware, sometimes we roll out features to some users and not others as part of that early release to test it. And also, once we start to roll out features, sometimes we may stop if there's something we need to change or fix or alter. But in general, once something has gone GA, if you're an enterprise client, you'll see it probably somewhere in the next 90 days. GCC and GCC High are government clouds. That takes longer because it has to go through a government approval program. Same for things like EDU. So my answer is, just because it's GA doesn't mean you're going to see it. If you want to see things quickly, certainly set up your tenant to be in first release, or get into our insiders program if you want to test it and play with it. But keep an eye on our roadmap for when something's GA. You can start to get those articles, get your folks trained, and make the most use of those great new features that you're excited about. This week, we're going to take a look at the new Poly Sync 20. The new Sync 20 is a brand new desktop speakerphone. Really nice carrying case that it comes with. On the side, we have our Bluetooth Connect. We also have a phone charge port, which I really like, and our power button.
Battery high, PC connected.
And we have a bunch of really cool options on it. So they have this rocket button. There is this, of course, Teams button, volume. So let's start by letting you hear how this thing sounds, because the sound on it is really, really impressive. good idea there. The sound sounds really, really nice on this. We also can see we have a dedicated Teams button that as soon as we tap it, it immediately brings up Teams for us, which is great. And if there's a call, it will automatically connect us to the call. The other thing is there's a programmable button, and I'll show you here how we go ahead and we do that. So we can see here we are all connected up. If we go to general, we can hear our battery level whenever we connect. What alert if we want to hear a voice or a tone whenever we make a wireless connection. The rocket button, that can be used for a play pause, redial. We could use it for Siri or Bistro or any one of the voice tools. We can clear the trusted device list or even hold or resume a call. So I like the fact that there's a programmable button on there. We can also mute alerts, have a single tone, choose how to manage second incoming calls. Of course, pick and choose what our ringtones sound like. So if there is a connected device, we can hit the drop down and pick ringtones, how bright they're going to be and where that comes, whether it's from the device or from the speakerphone. If we're using it as a soft phone, we can also have a dial tone that comes up, which is really nice, so that when we hit that, we can hear that come up if we choose to do it. We also can see that there's a wide variety of soft phone and media players that are supported. We have sensors and presence, so if it's aware for Microsoft tools, things like Link or Skype presence, and then of course for wireless, whether or not we're using HD voice or an exclusive connection, only picking one device that it's connected with. So the PolySync 20, really nice design. I love that it has a dedicated Teams button to answer calls or bring up Teams, and that additional programmable button, which is something we don't normally see in these types of devices, and I find that super useful. Echo and noise reduction, about 20 hours of battery life, fully charges in a little under 4 hours. There's a smart microphone away, so you get a really good balance. Can connect via USB-A or C, and the 20 Plus has a Bluetooth adapter. There's the cable nicely wrapped in there. Under $200, which is really great. Also acts as your cell phone charger in a pinch if you need it. Really nice design from Poly, the Sync 20. Let's talk about what's new in Teams. Well, in December, we saw a lot of great features that are starting to hit everybody's tenants this January. Let's break some of those down. Virtual breakout rooms should now be available to most folks in our standard tenants. EDU should also now have this, and we'll see this coming to Government Cloud in the future. Something cool you may have noticed is the end of meeting notification, letting you know that you've got 5 or 10 minutes left in your meeting. It's a great way to know when things are going to be wrapping up. You might have also noticed that our pre-join experience has changed a little bit, that now it's going to be easier to understand what audio, video, and device configuration is before joining that meeting and knowing if you need to change it. Live events limits are now extended. You can now have up to 20,000 attendees, and 50 events can be hosted simultaneously across your tenant. We now also support multiple number dialing, so you can see if you type in someone's name, the different numbers that are available to them. We've also brought out for our Teams rooms, proximity join for Teams conference rooms. Those are some of the highlights that you're going to see. We've also brought some great new features to our mobile, so make sure to check out our blog on Tech Community, where we wrap up every month all the great new features in Microsoft Teams. And as always, if you'd love to see one of these featured demoed on the show, reach out to me, let me know. I'd be happy to do it. Now, let's get back and hear more about Envision's project with Rhode Island. So this is an amazing story, but as soon as you give cool technology, especially to teens, they think of ways to use it that would never cross our minds. So when we were chatting, earlier in the week, we talked about the use of HoloLens and Tinkercad and what these students started to do with it. So walk us through that, because I think it's just fascinating.
Yeah, sure. So, I mentioned human-centric technology before. Yep. The whole point of this internship ended up being the COVID-19 challenge. The challenge was, hey, you were assigned to real-world companies as your corporate partners. They now need to figure out how to reinvent their businesses to accommodate COVID-19, or maybe they just simply need to, if not reinvent, they need to adjust to be able to operate during COVID-19. And so the corporate partners, by the way, who were amazing, gave these kids serious problems. I mean, they handed out questions for these kids that I thought wow, I'm glad they didn't ask me that. That's really hard. And so, throughout the course of the curriculum, the amazing team from Skills for Rhode Island ran sessions on ideation and critical thinking and business plan development. And these kids were tasked with finding solutions to these problems, building prototypes of their solutions, and then presenting them in competition, almost like a pitch competition. And so, one of the early asks of us that wasn't product development oriented was, hey, could you guys run sessions on rapid prototyping? And so we started thinking about that because we are a company full of people who love to tinker. And that, of course, is Tinkercad. And Tinkercad is this really great online 3D rendering platform that's pretty easy to use. You can skill up on it in a matter of a half an hour or an hour. And so we ran some sessions on, hey, here's how you use Tinkercad. And some of the kids of their own volition came to us and said, hey, do you know anyone at Microsoft that could help us with HoloLens? We'd really like to remodel this thing and see what it looks like in the real world. Well, it happens that we are in the HoloLens program. And so I said, well, we've got devices. And the kids built models. One of the challenges was for a nonprofit that does theater. And the state put restrictions on the number of people that could gather and distances and all this other stuff. The theater indoors was not going to work. And so the kids said, well, what if we moved it to this public park where there is already like a hat shell arrangement. And they basically went out, took measurements on this park, and then built a 2-scale model in Tinkercad, complete with vending trucks and tables and all this stuff, mocked it up in Tinkercad, sent us the 3D file, and then we put it into HoloLens, delivered the device to them, and then they went out in the outdoor setting and scaled it to the size of the park so that they could see physically how are the trucks going to lay out? Are people going to be able to get around the trees to get to them without bumping into each other? They built traffic flow patterns and redesigned it on the fly. It was exceptional. It was like nothing I've ever seen. And I was thinking to myself, well, I'm sure they'll make a really great, maybe we can teach them how to use Microsoft Whiteboard.
Yeah, right.
They aimed high and they delivered. It was great.
That's awesome. So you have this great infographic for us. Why don't you walk us through what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so what I've got is the timeline of the project, the 5-week window prior to the launch, and then the 7-week window of the launch. Because it was so compressed, I realized one day, wow, we did the whole ideation cycle and we had a product maturity experience all in that little 12 weeks. So I aligned it to that. And then I got thinking a little more and thought, well, geez, you could kind of map all the products and process that we were using to that cycle, and it all aligned beautifully. And so I thought, well, you can't not build a graphic out of that. So ta-da, there it is.
That's awesome. So what kind of feedback did you get from folks, from parents? And I know, this is a government program, so they're going to have input, things like that.
Well, so parents and certainly our local government were incredibly impressed with everything that was done by Skills for Rhode Island, the vision that they had for creating this program. They loved the application of the technology. But honestly, the best feedback we got was really from the students. We had kids who, in fact, one of the kids that was involved in that CAD program came, I was talking with her and said, is this something you're interested in?
Right.
And she said, no, actually, I wasn't sure what area of my corporate business to be in. I just kind of ended up in R&D. But honestly, I was applying for liberal arts programs. I'm rethinking that. I think I'm going to look for an engineering program. And she started talking about all the schools that she had never considered applying to, that all of a sudden she was like, I could do this. And so, for me, where a lot of my personal mission is around, promoting STEM and community, and particularly women in STEM.
Yeah.
What a great, wonderful moment at a time when we all needed it. It was very uplifting to see that. 2 of our teams actually are continuing post-program to develop their products independently. One of them is thinking about doing a Kickstarter. The other one we're still engaged with and working with another nonprofit, the company they were paired with, to take their idea and bring it to reality. So some really very real things came out of this.
That's awesome. Any lessons learned, things that you would do differently, things you didn't know about working with teams that you figured it out, but hey, if I had known this earlier, we could have saved a cycle or two or made things a little bit easier, as you're sharing this with other folks who are going, I wonder how I could do things along the line, the ways that you have.
Yeah. So I'll give you a lesson learned, and I'll give you a misstep that could have saved us some time.
Awesome.
So the lesson learned, first of all, we did something out of necessity that we actually have integrated permanently into our practice, and that's wireframing Teams build-outs. We only had 4.5 weeks. We knew there wasn't time for us to literally go in and build out a full Teams environment and then have the client say, well, we don't like that. Can you change this? We need it every second. So our graphics design team at Envision built a mock-up tool that let us create the look and feel of a Teams environment in a flat graphic that the client could literally mark up and say, yeah, change these things. And we went back and forth 2 or 3 iterations until they said go. I'm fortunate to have some really great engineers at Envision that develop scripts, and it's all PowerShell and things that are publicly available, but they organized it in a really smart way so that in the end, it was like they pushed a button and this thing built out, created all the accounts in Active Directory, assigned all the licensing, created the teams, built the channels, set the permissions and the policies, did all of that. And so we built the thing lightning fast.
Wow.
The place where we could have done better is the automation. We underestimated the value of the automation in this program. We ended up building automations basically 3 days a week throughout the course of the program because there was always a use case that they were saying, oh, can we do this? Can we do this? And they were great ideas. We knew we'd reuse it again. So we did that. It would have been smart for us to do 2 things. Number one, we didn't use SharePoint lists nearly to the advantage that we could have. Frankly, we know better. I think it was really just the time frame that we were under.
Sure.
We took the fastest path from point A to point B, and in that moment, the customer had handed us an Excel spreadsheet that had lists of students.
Oh.
And so we used it. In retrospect, it would have been way smarter to import that directly into lists and then build out the groups, the corporate assignments that the students had, because a lot of automations keyed off of that information. And so we could have done that piece better. But the other thing is that we underestimated the value of deploying beta testing variables inside of our automations, right? So if you have an automation, like we had one in particular that iterated through 110 Teams channels and was posting to some and not to others, depending on the circumstances that led to the automation being kicked off, a trigger. Building it and testing it, we hadn't planned for creating some accounts up front that we could basically redirect traffic to. So on 2 occasions, we inadvertently posted to 110 channels, but we didn't mean to. And lesson learned. There's something valuable there. So we've actually built that into our automation engine that we have as a stock default that we start our builds from now.
That's awesome.
So you get better every day.
Yeah. So you had said Teams is the business platform of the future. Why?
Yes. Well, I mean, first of all, Microsoft has not been shy about identifying Teams as being the center of productivity for an employee. And, for these students, they grew up in Google platforms, these students.
Yeah, they were born in the cloud. Yeah. They
were born in the cloud. They grew up in Google platforms, which in some ways prepares them for the transition, but a lot of them had never used any of these Microsoft products before. They were used to Google Sheets, and things like that. So to see them adopt it so quickly was very confidence building for a lot of us. We thought it was going to be harder to get them on board, but boy, did they adopt it fast. In 365 and in Teams, we have the ability to take in, and here's an ideal example from this. Rhode Island, one of the colleges here in the state, decided to give the students credit for the work that they were doing. They submitted portfolios and got college credit for this work also. Well, we didn't want to take them away from their field of vision. We didn't want them to say, hey, by the way, if you want to get credit, leave the path, climb this hill, traverse that thorny trench, and then, the promised land's on the other side. We wanted it directly in their line of sight. So we took the external portal that the university has, that the college has, and we integrated it directly into a Teams channel. The ability to take Microsoft and non-Microsoft resources and aggregate them centrally, put them directly in the line of sight of the people that are working in the environment is the reason why this is such an unprecedented platform for everybody. I mean, it's why the adoption's been so amazing.
Well, I want to ask you one last question. This is great, but what's next for you in Envision?
Oh man. Well, we're always looking at the next most interesting project, and there's 2 or 3 that we're working on. But we have a little passion project of our own on the side, which is that we realized that, and if you look right around me right now, I'm sitting in my living room, as a lot of people have been doing since March of last year, and I started thinking about sort of the ergonomics of life, and is it really healthy for me or anybody to be working in their living room, even if the setup is great?
Right.
And what I've effectively done is turned my restful space into my workspace. And so I started thinking originally, I'll put an addition on the house, or I'll repurpose a room. And then I had this idea about, hey, could we build a fully cloud integrated Microsoft native modular office building, something that you could drive on a trailer, drop down on a pad, and instantly hybrid telepresence, Teams rooms integration, lighting that is designed to be integrated with Power Automate to give you visual cues. I mean, simple thing, right? In my office, if I'm running late for a meeting in the conference room, I know. And the way I know is that even though I'm working on something out of the corner of my eye, I'll see a couple of people get up and start heading to that room. Right. I have visual cues.
It's there's a visual cue of some sort, right?
So we got this idea for this, and a whole bunch of us at Envision sat down one day on Teams and we're brainstorming about it, and we put together some really cool ideas. And I'm excited to tell you that in 2 weekends, I'm moving in. This weekend, we're turning on all the hybrid telepresence and the wireless, the enablement. It's all Wi-Fi 6. It's every single outlet in the building, every thermostat, every light fixture, all of it cloud enabled, and all of it integrated directly via Power Automate into our 365 tenant. So there's some very cool things there to learn about the design of a post-pandemic office of the future.
We will have to follow up with you, because I think we all want a tour. We'll get that. We'll post it in our extras area. I think that would be absolutely awesome. So Todd, folks now want to learn more. How can they go? Because I know you have a whole bunch of really cool videos that you guys did. You have documentation on this project, and of course, Envision itself, if folks would love to work with you. So what are some of the best ways for people to learn about you and Envision and see some of the work that you guys have done?
Sure. Well, if you want to learn more about Envision, you can certainly go and visit us on our website, envisionsuccess.net. And we've got some things there to make it easy to connect with us. If you click the connect button, you can actually schedule with us right through Microsoft Bookings, right there on the site. But the most exciting thing is that this year we've launched a new YouTube channel called Transform Everything. And the idea is to get everybody together in the community just to talk about how to use these technologies to do impactful, meaningful things in the world around you. So visit us there and check that out. We're just getting that on its feet, but we're excited to get started on it.
Awesome. And we'll put all those links up on the screen, and they'll also be available for those of you watching this on demand, just off to my left, I believe. Fantastic job. This is tremendous. I'm very excited to hear what our audience has to say. Thanks for joining us.
Stephen, I appreciate it, and thanks to Skills for Rhode Island for letting it be possible, and to my incredible team for turning it into reality. So thank you again, Stephen. Have a great day.
You too. What a great show. I want to thank Todd Knapp and the whole Envision team for the amazing work that they did. Thanks to producer Meg, and of course our new theme courtesy of Killa DBA. Make sure to check out our interview with him last season. Tons of great links. Make sure to check him out and visit. And of course, who's our next guest for our next show? One of my favorite companies, Lego. So don't miss it. Make sure to mark it on your calendars. We'll see you soon. As always, feel free to reach out to me at Stephen L. Rose on Twitter. Let me know what you think, what we can answer, and we'll see you real soon.